We all know we have the right to free speech, the right to vote, even the right to burn the flag if we want to. But what about abortion rights? What about the right to affordable health care? Is there even such a thing? We'll be answering those questions and more in this episode all about rights. We'll also be giving you our POC Top 3, along with some odd bits of reporting we call News You Can't Use. All this is coming up on the Physics of Civics. Our concept of rights goes back several centuries, at least as far back as the Magna Carta. You may have read about this in history. This was a document signed by the King of England in 1215, which limited the powers of the king and established the principle of individual rights and the idea that everyone is subject to the rule of law, including the king. Now, this was a monumental change historically in terms of what people assumed about those who ruled. Then in the late 1600s, there was a philosopher named John Locke who expounded on this idea of individual rights and the notion that our rights are not granted by government or by any other earthly authority, but rather are inherent within each of us, within every human being, by virtue of our humanity. Now, inspired by that idea, by Locke and others, our founders, specifically Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, and John Adams, wrote and issued the Declaration of Independence. Now, we've all heard of that. We hold these truths to be self-evident, yada, yada, yada. And along with giving notice to the British Crown that the American colonies were to be a separate and independent nation, the Declaration of Independence was also specifically written to be a universal declaration of human rights. It declared that everyone is born with the same fundamental rights, including the right to live, the right to be free, the right to conduct our lives as we choose without any undue interference from government or any other powers that be. So, and very importantly, they considered these rights to apply not just to themselves, but to everybody, everywhere. And really, these were the principles that our republic was founded on. Let's talk about what rights are. What do we mean when we say we've got rights? Well, rights are specific benefits and privileges and or protections to which one is entitled by virtue of one's standing. And by standing, I mean things like one's age, legal status, place of residence, etc. Now, the idea of having rights is generally treated as more than just a good idea or a suggestion. It is a moral imperative. As such, rights involve a guarantor. That means somebody who's protecting our rights. Because when rights are not protected, they really have no value. Usually, typically, under the Constitution, those rights that are recognized are protected by government. So when you say you have a right to this or that, it means that the government is obligated to protect that right or to provide that benefit or privilege.
Give some examples, like how are those rights protected?
Okay, so for example, you've got the right to free speech. This is what Greg in the TED Talks talked about. You have a right to speak your mind, to write what you believe. And if somebody infringes on that right, it's up to the government to protect you. This episode of the Physics of Civics is brought to you by Savage Soaps. Cleanse, nourish, and revitalize your skin with luxurious handcrafted soaps for men and women. All made right here in the USA with sustainable, locally sourced ingredients. Shop SavageSoaps.com for soaps, body butter, salt scrubs, and other skin-loving products. Get wet with Savage Soaps.
Well, we're seeing a lot of it, instances now where that's not the case. I mean, on these
absolutely
on these campuses, and if you try to bring in a conservative speaker, they literally won't let him speak. I mean, so
they will not.
What do you do in that case, Bill? Where's the government?
Yeah, you get a new government. Well, I mean, it's kind of the long game, because there have been times throughout our history when basic fundamental rights were denied systematically. I mean, you have to look no further than slavery.
Slavery, you sure?
You got a right to be free. Well, they were people, and they were not free, and the government was not protecting their rights until they finally came around and said, okay, we're going to protect your rights, and they had a war over it.
Right. And eventually wrote new laws to protect specific individuals who were not protected. But in this case, when I say this case, I mean, in currently, you've got people who are literally, I mean, just look at Twitter before Elon bought it.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you protect those rights when an organization like that can literally, now granted, it's not government, but whose job is it to come in and say, hey, this isn't fair? Canceling people, not allowing people with certain ideas to speak at all, literally taking them off your platform. How do you protect that?
Ultimately, again, that's the job of the government. And when I say the government, I mean in the legislature, all three branches of government, the legal system in general. You sue for your rights,
and it goes to the courts, and courts decide. Yeah,
courts decide. They adjudicate on it, and theoretically, hopefully, rights are protected that way. And the other part of that is you have to remember is that rights exist within a hierarchy. The fact of the matter is some rights take precedent over others, depending, on what it is. For example, if I'm making my living doing something that is harmful, that potentially, puts your life in danger, well, obviously your right to life supersedes my right to make money. It's a balancing act, and that's what the courts are for. That's what the legislature is for, to create these laws that protect rights, and the courts enforce and interpret the laws.
You've mentioned there's several different types of rights. What are
there
some
are different types of rights, and some are like I said, supersede others. Start with the lowest level of rights, or one of the lowest levels. You've got, for example, contractual rights. Those are the rights that you have for those who are party to an agreement. And those are usually set forth in writing, in a contract.
Sure.
So if your contract entitles you to live in this apartment for X amount of months, that is your right. You have it under contract. You also have legal rights. Those are for those who are under a particular jurisdiction. You may have the right to operate a vehicle, contingent upon your obeying the laws of that state or wherever. You've got contractual rights, you've got legal rights. You also have civil rights, and civil rights is much broader and sometimes a little difficult to understand. Civil rights, by definition, accrue to anyone who is a citizen. So, for example, civil rights include the right to vote, the right to access public accommodations, etc. If I'm a citizen of the United States, I have the right to vote in national elections. If I'm a citizen of Maryland, which I am, I don't have the right to vote in Virginia.
Right.
Because my standing is as a citizen of Maryland, not of Virginia. If I were a citizen, you are a citizen of Virginia, you have the right to vote in Virginia. So civil rights are based on citizenship. Then you get to fundamental human rights, what some people call natural rights. And those accrue to everybody, period. We talked about some of those. The right to live, the right to be free. In conjunction with that are constitutional rights. Those are the fundamental human rights that are specifically recognized and enumerated within the Constitution.
For example?
Well, for example, women's suffrage, the right for women to vote. That was not a constitutional right when this country was first founded. And in 1920, the Constitution was amended, and now it is a constitutional right. It is specifically set forth in the Constitution. The argument comes when people say you've got a constitutional right to an abortion. Well, technically, no, you don't, because
it's not in the Constitution.
Abortion isn't mentioned in the Constitution.
Yeah.
You may feel that you have the fundamental right to an abortion, but it's not constitutional because it's not in the Constitution.
Yeah, let me ask you a question, and this is topical, and it's these are situations that are occurring presently, and that is illegal immigration. I mean, it's one of the biggest topics in the country right now.
Sure.
Without getting into a side on what's right and what's wrong.
Right, our opinions on it. Right.
What rights are granted to illegal aliens? In other words, civil rights. Do they have civil rights? Human rights? Do they have? Obviously, they're humans, but what about the constitutional rights? Aren't there conflicts kind of running between the different types of rights? Because we hear it on the news every day right now.
Sure.
And
sure.
How does the government address and resolve these conflicts?
If I knew the answer to that,
you'd run for office.
I'd be the president. Immigrants, whether illegal or not legal, or whether they're citizens or not, they have human rights. They all have basic fundamental rights. The right to live, the right to be free, the right to pursue their own happiness. Do they have constitutional rights?
Like people are saying they have a right to housing, they have a right to health care. And how do you delineate between that being a fundamental human right and that being a constitutional right?
Well, first of all, those it's debatable whether housing and healthcare are fundamental rights.
Right. Well, certainly not in the Constitution.
I'll get into that in a second. But does an illegal alien have the right to speak his mind? Yes. Does an illegal alien have a right to publish something? They have every right to express their opinion, to worship their God. Those are the kinds of Bill of Rights that everybody has. As long as they're here in America, they will be protected. Civil rights? Not so much, because they're not citizens. If citizenship means anything, you can't give foreigners the right to vote in American election.
Yeah.
If they have no legal right to be here in the first place, they certainly have no civil right to vote. They don't have rights to public accommodations like Medicare and Social Security. Those are reserved for American citizens.
Well, that seems obvious, but that's not what we see.
But it doesn't seem obvious to some people.
Yeah, right. In some states.
Now, when you talk about the right to health care, the right to housing, you have the right to pursue health care. You have the right to acquire housing. But if you had the right to health care, that means the government has the obligation to provide your health care. If you had the right to food, that means that you could walk into any supermarket and grab whatever you want and not pay for it. And the government has to protect the right to do that. You don't have a right to food. You have the right to buy food.
Right.
You have the right to grow food. Mm-hmm. But the government is and the taxpayers are under no obligation to protect your right to those things. What's the difference? Why is one thing a right and something isn't a right? Well, first of all, there's got to be a certain specificity, and right needs to be delineated. You can't just say, I have rights. You have to say, I have this right. Okay? Second of all, you've got to have some legitimate standing. Like I said, a civil right doesn't apply to someone who isn't a citizen. Human rights don't apply to animals.
Right.
You may have some understanding of the concept of animal rights and whatever those may be, but they don't have the same rights as humans. You also need a credible guarantor. In most cases, that's the government. That's what we're talking about.
Right.
The government has to enforce or protect those rights. The government has to protect your right to free speech. It doesn't have to provide you housing. It can. There's no reason why it can't, but it's under no constitutional or legal or moral obligation to do so. And I think you also have some kind of reasonable entitlement, some legitimacy. For example, if a right has to be inherently right. If something is inherently unjust, it cannot be a right. I don't have the right to murder my children.
Yeah, exactly.
It also has to be rationally applicable. You have to have some I don't have the right to ride a unicorn on public streets.
Sure you do. Go for it.
But I mean, that's kind of a weird example, but it's got to be rational.
And going back to the immigration conversation, and again, we don't want to get in the middle of that argument, but at the same time, it seems kind of obvious from a civics, from a legal, from a constitutional aspect it seems obvious to me that if you are not legal, then you don't have those rights. Now, if you're on the side that wants illegal immigrants to have these rights, then pass a law or create a constitutional amendment.
That would be the first step. Right. If you can pass the law that says to do that, and there are some interpretations of the law, like, for example, the Department of Health and Human Services has just reinterpreted a 1996 law to say that illegal immigrants are not entitled to some of these government benefits. There was an interpretation back during the Clinton administration, which is when this law passed, but HHS a couple of years later interpreted the law to say that illegal immigrants are entitled to these things too, but it was not according to the letter of the law. And now they've interpreted to say that you don't. I'm sure that some court somewhere is going to challenge that. And under our system, they can.
Yeah, sure.
And if it gets to the Supreme Court, that'll be adjudicated one way or another. But I think you're right. I think there are certain things that it seems just common sense that someone who has a foreign national who has no right to be here should not be entitled to the same considerations as a U.S. citizen. I mean, if citizenship means anything at all. So that's a little bit about understanding rights. What are our rights and what do they mean? I hope this has made some sense to folks. If you have any questions or ideas or thoughts, maybe things that you think we got wrong, let us know in the comments. We will address them, and we would love to hear from you. So now we come to our top three.
Ooh.
The topic for today's top three is your top three favorite childhood toys.
I love it.
You had toys. Your parents loved you when you were small, didn't they? Yeah, and they gave you stuff like toys and stuff. Mine did.
When you came up with this topic for top three, I did. I'm so old. I had to go think about what I used as toys when I was a kid. So I was a kid in the 60s and 70s. So it's been a while. But I searched, top toys of the 60s and 70s, and oh man, it was a thrill seeing some of this stuff again. So here's my top three, Phil. Starting with number three. And you're going to relate to this too, as a guy growing up in the late 60s. The Tudor electric football game. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. It's a little...
It kind of has a...
Yeah. It has an on-off switch, and you have these... It's a metal... all the toys were metal in our day. It's like a metal football field with the, yard lines and the end zone painted on it. And then you have these little football players and a little
plastic guys.
Plastic guy. And you have a little foam ball, and you put the ball in one of the players' hands. You set up your offense and defensive line, and you turn it on, and it would shake and vibrate, and the guys would move around. Half the time they'd run the wrong way, or the ball would fall out,
or just run around in circles.
It'd be a fumble, and whoever touched the ball first. It was just, as a kid, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
In the same regard, number two, and this is probably something kids today don't have any idea what I'm talking about. The Rock'em Sock'em robots. Remember those?
Oh yeah.
It was like you took it out of the box, and it was like a little boxing ring, like 1 foot box.
A little square boxing ring.
And it was all mechanical, no electronics, and you had
you had a red fighter and a blue fighter.
Right.
Kind of like today's politics.
And the object, you had these two buttons that would operate the two arms on your player, your fighter.
Right.
The object was to knock the other guy's head off. Imagine that today.
And it wasn't supposed to come off. It would just kind of shoot off.
It would dislocate from the body, basically.
You press it back down.
That was a lot of fun. Yeah. Man. And my number one, and this is kind of boring, but I got, just from my perspective, building models. That's a lost art, man, I think.
Yeah.
When
my brother was into models. He was very meticulous.
It was so fun, man. You make cars and boats and ships from the Navy and planes, and one of my favorites and one of the models that took me forever to build was the Star Trek Enterprise. It was huge. It was like a foot across. Then you'd have little decals you put on them, and you painted them,
and little paints and stuff. I
can still remember the smell of that tester's plastic cement that you use. That stuff. Get high as shit.
Were you breathing it a little too heavily?
Yeah. So anyway,
squirting it into a bag. Maybe.
I know we're showing our age here, but those are the three that come to mind, and there are a lot more, but I picked those three.
I got a couple of those models for Christmas. I got this 3-foot tall Saturn V rocket.
Oh yeah.
And I didn't know how to put that stuff together, and my brother was brilliant at it, and he said, are you going to build that? And I said, no, you want it? And he said, yeah, he loved it.
Yeah, I loved it.
And he did a great job with it.
Yeah, it was meticulous. So what are your top three?
All right. My top three, I would say number 3 is the ever-present Frisbee.
Oh, yeah.
We played Frisbee for hours. We play Frisbee football, play Ultimate Frisbee. I used to love playing Frisbee all the time. And I got, pretty good at throwing and catching them.
Now they have Frisbee golf. Have you seen that? Yeah. It's even on TV on ESPN. It's like, they have it's competitive. Yeah, very competitive. It's fun.
And you've got these little things you hang on like tree trunks or lamp posts. We didn't do that. We weren't that sophisticated.
Wasn't that sophisticated, no.
Number 2, this is actually, according to the History Channel, the number one to this day, the number one top-selling toy of all time. Number 2 top-selling toy of all time is Barbie.
Oh, wow. You played with Barbies?
This is a little interesting. Ruth Handler invented Barbie, and it became the number 2. Her husband, Elliot Handler, invented this toy, and it was the number 1, and still today, Hot Wheels.
No kidding. Wow, what a power couple, man.
Yeah. So the same married couple, 1 and 2, pretty damn good.
Yeah, Hot Wheels were awesome.
I had tons of Hot Wheels. I had a little carrying case for them and the track and everything.
Oh, and little loops. They did the loop-de-loops.
Oh, yeah. So fun. And the little power station that would just kind of shoot them across as you go by.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. Good times.
Number 1, and this is building on the same automotive motif. I kind of graduated from Hot Wheels to AFX slot cars.
Oh my God,
those things were so fun, man. I would sit the electric slot cars, and we had such cool ones. Like they had a Mustang Shelby and a Corvette Stingray.
So fun.
Those were freaking fun.
Kids today don't know what they're missing, bro.
Oh man! In fact, I might get an AFX.
Hell yeah! I'll come over and play with it.
You should come over and play.
Absolutely, that was a lot of fun. Good times, man. So Phil's turn this week to present a news you can't use story. What do you got, Phil?
So this story comes from United Press International, and it is a story about the world's most expensive cheese, a Cabrales cheese. Now, I'm
never heard of it.
Partly Spanish, so I'm going to try to do my best Spanish pronunciation here. Was sold at auction. 5 pounds of it. It's kind of an aged, very spicy blue cheese variety.
I love blue cheese.
Called Cabrales cheese. How much you think it sold for? Take a guess.
$100, $200
for 5 pounds.
I don't know.
$42,232.
Damn.
For 5 pounds of cheese.
Somebody's got too much money. What?
That's about $500 an ounce.
Good Lord. What makes it so special?
Well, the cheese was created by the Ángel Díaz Heredo Cheese Factory.
Well done.
Sold in the Regulatory Council in Cabrales, Asturias, Spain.
Man, you're on a roll.
Took first place in the auction of Mejor Queso de Certamen, which means best cheese of the competition.
Show off.
And it was purchased by a restaurateur at a restaurant called El Llagar de Goyoto in Spain for more than $42,000.
Can it be that good? I mean,
I think about this, and you think about expensive wines. There's like $1 million wine sold at auction. How much better is a $1 million wine than a $50 wine?
Not to my palate.
Could I tell the difference? No.
Yeah.
I'm sure this cheese is delicious. I love blue cheese.
Me too. I love it. $42,000 better?
$500 an ounce? I think not.
No. Can't be that good. I'm sorry.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for checking in with us here at the Physics of Civics. We hope you had a good time, and learned a few things about rights. Don't forget to like and share and follow us on social media, and make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode of The Physics of Civics. We want to thank our sponsor, Savage Soaps, for taking care of us, and we invite you to join us next time on The Physics of Civics.